Hi!
Hello everyone, and welcome to a speculation video where Kayla and I are going to be diving in deep to figure out what might be happening in the upcoming Amazon Lord of the Rings show, The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power.
Oh, keep that in.
I personally am a pretty big Lord of the Rings fan, though I've only read the books a couple of times and the Silmarillion once. The Hobbit, I don't know, I was really young when I read that. Kayla here has read the Silmarillion
3 times, Lord of the Rings maybe about 8 times, The Hobbit at least 5, because I also started in elementary school, and then a couple encyclopedias.
It's safe to say she's a bigger fan than even myself, and we have some thoughts, it's safe to say, on what exactly this show might be. But first, Kayla here is a professional voice actress, and we are going to have her read the synopsis for the upcoming Lord of the Rings show for you. So insert dramatic stock footage, dramatic music, begin.
Amazon Studios' forthcoming series brings to screens for the very first time the heroic legends of the fabled Second Age of Middle-earth's history. This epic drama is set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and will take viewers back to an era in which great powers were forged, kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin, unlikely heroes were tested, hope hung by the finest of threads, and the greatest villain that ever flowed from Tolkien's pen threatened to cover all the world in darkness. Beginning in a time of relative peace, the series follows an ensemble cast of characters, both familiar and new, as they confront the long-feared re-emergence of evil to Middle-earth. From the darkest depths of the Misty Mountains, to the majestic forests of the elf capital of Lindon, to the breathtaking island kingdom of Numenor, to the furthest reaches of the map, these kingdoms and characters will carve out legacies that live on long after they are gone.
I feel like I'm being judged. That was really stressful.
That was really good.
That was really stressful.
Before we get into the discussion, though, a quick word from today's sponsor. Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to talk to you about today's sponsor, Lord of Maps. And joining me as my mic holder is Mickey Mouse's severed head. Kill me now! That's enough from you, Mix. If you're a big old fantasy fan like me, I bet you want to decorate your house in a classy, adult fashion that represents your fantastical passion. Lord of Maps is here to deliver exactly that service with high-quality, hand-drawn maps from the owner of the company. Look at these dorks, they're so lovable! It's always wonderful for me as a content creator where I come across a product that's not only high quality that I'm willing to recommend to my audience, but super on brand for the channel. And Lord of Maps checks those boxes. Right, Mickey? I feel nothing but pain! So if you would like to check out a high-quality, fantastical inspired map, all you have to do is check the link in the description and you can have your own state or country beautifully displayed on your wall today. Not today, it has to ship to you, but soon. And at the very end of this, I'm gonna give you a grand theory that I'm gonna judge your reaction to. So I have a couple quick questions for you. First and foremost, how sci-fi do you think Numenor should be presented? Because it's kind of debatable on how, because we don't know the exact aesthetic, we just have descriptions and things like that.
Yeah.
For your personal taste, how sci-fi do you want it to hit?
I don't want it to be too science fiction-y, honestly. Like, while they're a well-developed nation, I don't want it to be, like, over the top where it's going to turn a lot of viewers off from it. I want there to really keep that kind of aesthetic that Gondor had, mainly because like all of these are based off the island of Numenor. I mean, these are really the children and the descendants of Numenor who come to Middle Earth and set up in the exiles. When they, escape after the fall of Numenor, they're basically setting up these kingdoms, and I feel it should really, truly reflect that. So using Gondor as kind of a starting point and then building off of that.
So that's the question, though. This isn't connected to Peter Jackson's films necessarily. There's been some talk of like having similar people work on it, but do you want them to just straight up rip the aesthetic from Peter Jackson's films, or should it be something different? Because Peter Jackson's aesthetic was heavily influenced by the illustrated editions from a certain artist's name on the screen, but that is by no means the definitive vision, although a lot of people do consider it such.
I think just from a marketing standpoint, Amazon would do well to take lots of inspiration and not deviate too much. They're a very well-loved series, and I think a lot of those illustrations are also kind of the standard for what most people associate with The Lord of the Rings. So I think from a marketing standpoint, it would be really smart of them, not only just from the visual aspect of Gondor and reflection of Numenor, but just other things from the Peter Jackson versions of The Lord of the Rings, and taking little bits and pieces, things that we maybe had seen in the films or things that were maybe missing but part of that storyline, and then bringing them into this version would then capture that audience and have people who are maybe not as big of fans as we are, who don't know as much of the backstory, be able to relate those things together. If they're too different visually or elsewise, I don't think there will be some people who it'll just go over their head.
That's going to be, in my opinion, the show's biggest hurdle on the level of just they're constantly going to be in the shadow of the movies. They cannot escape them. The way they're shot is going to be something it's compared to. The performances are something it's going to be compared to. Like Peter Jackson's realization of Lord of the Rings is so tied into the zeitgeist interpretation of Tolkien now that the more they pull away from it, they're going to get flack for not feeling like it. The more they lean into it, the more they're going to get flack for ripping it off, but from two very different crowds. I personally would rather them get flack from ripping it off, but still being able to say, it looked really damn good though, so like, go with it. As much as I didn't actually like the final look of the title reveal they went for, it somehow managed to look CG even though it wasn't CG. I still really like the message it was clearly sending to fans, which was, we're going to be doing practical stuff. Like that, I think it would be pretty safe to say the reason they did this big, showy, practical reveal is entirely to say like, hey, we know what the general sentiment is. We're going to build these sets. We're going to invest the money in it. I don't know if the gigantic studio they've built for the Wheel of Time stuff is also going to be used for sets for the Lord of the Rings show. I think a lot of the sets in the Wheel of Time show were pretty impressive, so it gives me a hope that this show with an even bigger budget will look even better. I'm always concerned from the structure level, shifting what we're talking about a little bit, because The Hobbit, as you touched on earlier, was suffering from being stretched out, and a lot of the stuff from the Second Age, if you read it in the Silmarillion, it's not as thick as Lord of the Rings. It's going to have to be not stretched out, but further explored than the direct narrative gave for it to fill a full season of television.
I don't know. I have kind of not a differing opinion, but I think Amazon made a very brilliant choice here by choosing the Second Age, because there is actually quite a bit that goes on in the Second Age. It's starting after, I believe it's called the War of Wrath, and so we have Morgoth being sent into the Void.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to put Morgoth on the screen.
But, okay, like, give me, like, a second here, because I actually have not followed anything on the Lord of the Rings show here. I kind of leave that business to you. So I was literally looking at all this about a minute or two ago. When I saw the picture there, it's clear that they're going to reference things that happened in the First Age, which is a great marketing strategy for them, because if this is successful, that sets up possibilities for exploring the First Age. They can look at the founding, the creation of Ea itself. If they were going to choose the First Age, and let's say the years of the lamps or of the trees themselves, and focus solely on that, but let's say that the show failed or wasn't received well, then that kind of shuts down any possible success in the future for following ages. But by starting in the Second Age, you can tie in a lot of characters that people are familiar with. You've got Galadriel in there. Elrond comes in towards the middle of the Second Age.
And Sauron.
Yeah, obviously, so that I was getting there.
Sorry.
Sauron's a big one too. But there are characters that people will recognize, as well as certain things that people perhaps glossed over in the movies because those choices were particularly aimed at Lord of the Rings fans. But someone like my dad, who has never read the books, never followed them other than seeing them in the movie theater once, he didn't really get the point of the Palantir and what their history was behind them and when they came into being and their usage. And so the Second Age is when the Palantirs are gifted to the Numenorians, who kind of divulged and diverged away before the downfall. Having those to carry over to the exiled realms and to have those start to become a part of Middle-earth, it really builds into where The Lord of the Rings starts and The Hobbit starts. So I think, honestly, it was a great place for them to pick was the Second Age.
I agree. I also think the First Age is just going to be flashbacks. Like,
yeah, easy.
We've already seen stuff in images that's like, that's First Age, so we're going to do flashbacks. Now I have the most important question. Should Tommy B make a...
Tommy B! Tommy B, my boy! I love me some Tom Bombadil.
Should Tom Bombadil be in the show, or is there just no way tonally that can work and it would screw it up?
What? No! This is... Oh my god, this is when I want to rip open my shirt and just have like Tom Bombadil fan for life here. Like, that's what I want. Oh my god, y'all don't even know my love of Tommy B. So Tom Bombadil has like walked across the earth, and he's such a fascinating character because he, at times, you know, has sort of this presence in the whatever realm he is in, and then in the next breath, he's just like drinking and dancing with Goldberry, having a good time. Even Tolkien himself said he wasn't really sure. It was supposed to be like a reflection, I think, of his son, he said in a letter one time, or inspired by it, but even he hadn't really kind of fully fixed what Bombadil was. And so for me, it would be such a great idea of Amazon because it was the one thing in Peter Jackson's films that he did not put in there was Tommy B. Mm-hmm. And I know there were a lot of people like myself who were a little bummed by not seeing, you know, the Barrow Wights and getting to encounter Bombadil and Goldberry on their journey. And because of just what he represents in Middle-earth. And so I think it would be great. Sorry, am I getting too excited?
No, I love the excitement. I just love the idea of like Second Age, super dramatic, like super powered stuff. And in the background is just Tommy B like...
Was that not him in the Third Age? Like, Sauron is rising again. He saw the rise and fall of Sauron the first time, and he's seen Morgoth come and go. Even Gandalf and Elrond admit that Tommy B couldn't take this ring because he'd probably freaking chuck it somewhere and forget about it. Covered most of Middle-earth, he said, on his travels, but he primarily focused on areas like the Shire, which is where he got...
He focused on a place with booze and weed.
And that's when he took the name Tom Bombadil, was because of all the hobbits kind of nicknaming him that. It would be something great that Amazon could claim as their own, that is separate from Peter Jackson, and really make themselves stand out, but it's something that's so loved by so many of the Tolkien fans. I think it would be a really smart choice, and because we know so little about his travels, you could really work him in a lot of different ways.
I completely disagree. I get where you're coming from. I totally respect it, but for me, he is just... This show, in my opinion, is going to have to maintain a very specific tone, and you cannot do that with a guy in the background who's just like...
You realize you are like completely contrasting your own channel. You legitimately try to have in-depth intellectual discussions. Be like, we're having a tone, we're discussing things here. And then you snort flour off a knife.
Tom Bombadil is not the goblin. The goblin is special.
I'm just saying it would be something that they could reach for that wasn't claimed by Peter Jackson, that is still well loved by the community and make their own. Mm-hmm. And he's such a flexible person to work with in that way.
But how would claiming Tom Bombadil be different than like claiming Numenor, which they're going to be able to do?
Well, Numenor itself too is similar. It's grabbing reflection, or is grabbing things that we are familiar with from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So as we know, Aragorn is a descendant of the Dunedain, and he is also...
Are all Rangers or just him? It's just him because he's of the Gondorian line.
Say he's from the line of kings.
But there's something special about the Rangers. What is that? I can't remember. Or are they just badass dudes?
You know, that's a good question because I'm not really...
Tolkien heads, let us know. Are the Rangers special? Are you ready for my grand theory that I want to end this on?
Before we do that, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the thing you most want to see in here?
Numenor. By far. I'm so excited to see a Numenor if they do it well.
But I'm curious, like, what part of Numenor... So, like, the part that I was reading... Let me go back.
No, that's why I opened my question with it, because I think, like, seeing this city that's supposed to be so advanced, yet not straight up, like, Space Marines from StarCraft, or, like, something from, like, Warhammer, it's going to be very difficult to adapt right. But if they manage to do it, it'll be completely different than anything else we've seen in fantasy before. Debatably, in the Wheel of Time show, we got a glimpse of the Age of Legends, so it could be kind of like that. But for the Wheel of Time show, they just leaned into, like, there are literally spaceships going around. So I think Numenor has a different interpretation of fantasy retro futurism, but the retro is way back. So I'd love to see something like that.
I think for me, so I'm looking right now at that summary we read, and they're talking about starting in the depths of the Misty Mountains, and obviously it's called The Power of the Ring. So I think we're going to be focusing a lot on Gil-galad and his encounter, like, because his entire capital and reign and region was in Lindon. That's the kingdom of Gil-galad. And so he's going to be a huge focus. And also he is in the Last Alliance. He basically leads the Last Alliance there. And so I think Gil-galad's going to be a big focus. And then when he encounters Celebrimbor.
You think Celebrimbor's gonna be like a major player?
I would be surprised if he wasn't, because Celebrimbor was then basically tortured by Sauron and then mounted on a spike with arrows in him, and then he was paraded along by Sauron.
I think that's basically that'll be the last episode. I think the last episode's gonna go dark, and that ties into my final theory.
Well, and that's my thinking as well. And also looking at the title page, I don't know if you got this or if I'm like reading way too into things, but I got this feeling that we're going to be focusing a lot on the sinking and the downfall of Numenor as well, and the corruption arc that, you know, happens amongst the people and the splitting of the Numenorians between the king's men and the faithful, because that would then be able to lead into how the faithful settled into Middle-earth. These references to things like the White Tree of Gondor being a sapling.
Oh, they're going to go a lot of fan service route.
I think so. I think it'd be smart for them, like referencing Nimloth as the White Tree, because Nimloth was then sacrificed at Sauron's temple before the fall of Numenor, and then be able to bring them into their show, but they're still different. It makes people who are just casual watchers rather than in-depth fans have something to latch onto. But the title page that I was going back to, it gave me the feeling that they, like visually, it started out with this giant chasm, which I know they were filling with lava and, you know, molten liquid afterwards. But the visual effect of it was like this gaping chasm with like mist going over it. And that really reminded me of when Eru Ilúvatar like broke a giant chasm across Aman to protect the Valar from the invasion of the Numenorians. And so that to me was giving me those vibes like, oh, maybe they're gonna reference it, because then at the end, these like crashing waters that came on at the end of the title page as well, Numenor sunk by a giant freaking wave.
You stole my theory.
Did I? I'm so sorry.
Thanks for stealing that. I was like ready to be like, I think the title is this thing, and you just took it from me. So that's...
I'm so sorry.
That's fucking... Okay.
Don't be mad.
I'm not mad. It's fine.
Really...
It's fine. It's whatever. Thank you everyone for watching this video. We really appreciate it. It's been a discussion of what we think the series Lord of the Rings may or may not be about and or cover. I personally think including Tom Bombadil would be stupid. She thinks it's the smartest idea ever.
I did not
That's
say
exactly what you said. I also think every season's gonna get a nice title, and I think the next season might be The Downfall of Numenor. That's my call. Anyway, everyone, love you. Bye.
Bye.